All right, we are back for another Friday financial wrap up with Mr. Michael Zuber, and it's Super Bowl weekend. Michael, your thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Go Niners. Brock Purdy for
Yeah,
MVP.
yeah. Say it one more time. Who for MVP?
Brock Purdy.
I love it. Let's get right into the show.
We're less than 2 weeks away from the event. I'm a wee bit nervous, so that's probably a good thing.
I am too. It's funny you say that. I actually am too. I got little butterflies. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
It's
deal.
been a while. I haven't had a commission or a quota in like 6 years. I haven't really felt this in a while. So it's a good feeling.
I agree. I agree. I'm excited for next week, the event. Let's get right into the show. So this is for February the 9th, 2024. Let's get right into the Fed. Fed speak. What was the Fed talking about this week? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this week's been very quiet on the economic front. We've gotten some numbers around credit cards and things of that nature, but generally speaking, since last week's job numbers and next week's CPI, this week was really quiet. What was it filled with? It was filled with something like 14 or 15 different Federal Reserve presidents spouting whatever they're spouting. When you kind of step back and really look at what the collection of what they said is no March rate cut, which the market finally is listening to. Many of them are talking about no more rate increases, with one exception that I can remember. So we're at the terminal rate. And now it's really about, hey, we want to have multiple data points that say inflation is coming in, soft landing. So now we're back to talking about May or June. So that was really what the week was, really quiet economic front. But yep, the Fed presidents are like, guys, March rate cuts are not coming. Just stop with the madness.
Yeah.
So that's what this week was.
It's interesting. You've been saying that all along. I mean, I feel like you said that 6, 8, 12 weeks ago that maybe by summer. And again, the theme all year last year was higher for longer, higher for longer. And so that is, in this case, the Fed confirmed that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about the market. I don't know if the market thinks the Fed's lying or if the Fed's wrong or both. But the market has generally been ahead of the Fed for a year, and they were ahead of them one more time. For example, the chances of a March rate cut, I think, peaked at 83%. They're now under 20%. So pretty significant repricing. And the Fed's like, dude, I keep telling you, it's not coming. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, so I think the market finally heard them.
I think it's interesting. Yeah. When you see Wall Street, the public markets, equity trade, stocks and such, they kind of almost, try to force the issue, try to force the opinion. Does it feel like that?
Yeah, if you look historically, Greenspan, Yellen, Bernanke, I think it's fair to say that all three of them were led by the market. Jerome Powell, there was a 2018 where he got hoodwinked, but ever since then he's like, no, I'm in charge. The market follows. And yeah, I think he wants to kill the Fed put. We talked about that well over a year ago. He doesn't want to go down as being the next guy that keeps the Fed put going, which means he bails out the market. He doesn't want to do that. And I think he's betting on his reputation. So, yep.
Very well said. And again, not something that a lot of people, I don't hear anybody really talking about it the way you just broke that down. That was very well said. I love it. So let's keep going. Let's talk about mortgage rates. What did you see this week? I have a couple of kind of thoughts on it, but what did you see this week and your thoughts?
Well, basically, the market realized that the Fed wasn't going to likely be cutting 6 times. So if you start to back out 6 cuts and go to 4, rates go up. So the 10-year note went up pretty significantly. It went up from, I think, 3.8 to 4.15, something like that. It's a very big move for the 10-year. And we have seen that roll over into interest rates. Interest rates actually went back over 7% this week. I do believe that they'll settle by the end of Friday, right? The end of the day, they'll be under 7 again, but you never know. But yeah, it's wild to think that rates were over 7% once again this week.
Yeah, again, that's a little, I'm scratching my head as well. And I'm kind of confused. If we look back the last 7, 8 weeks, it feels like in, December, we were at, trending at 6.62, 6. 6.6 plus or
Yep.
minus, felt like we were going to 6.25, six and a
Yep.
half, somewhere in that
Yep.
range. And now all of a sudden we're back closer to 7 or plus or minus
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
What, any thoughts kind of going forward, and just maybe any other things that to pay attention to, or things that you think will influence this?
Well, Tuesday will be a big day, right? We'll talk about that at the end, right? Inflation
Okay.
reading. But that's really where we are. We're going to be
Okay.
watching jobs and inflation, right? The Fed has been very clear. We have a dual mandate, full employment and stable prices. The next reading will be stable prices, aka CPI and PPI, which is next week. So we'll talk more about that at the end. But I think that's where we are. We're going to be watching Tuesday.
Stay to the very end, folks. Stay to the very end. It's a it's an ever-changing, uncertain market. Let's continue. Let's talk about earnings. What did you see this week? Your thoughts on earnings?
Earnings have been, I don't know, better than expected. I mean, I'm watching. It's really interesting. I think something that not in the show notes that we should just talk about is the bifurcated consumer,
Hmm.
the have and have nots.
Yep.
And I think we're starting to see earnings announcements from folks that cater to one side do okay, and folks that cater to the other side not so great. For example, McDonald's. McDonald's earnings announcement was pretty bad. In their earnings announcement, they actually highlighted that people are trading down. Now, I mean, trading down for McDonald's, I mean, okay. Now, what are they doing? They're eating at home.
Yep.
It's just cheaper to eat at home. Then you could look at Chipotle. Now, I don't think Chipotle would put themselves in the category of McDonald's, but I will. They're fast food. And Chipotle numbers were amazing. Now, from where I sit, Chipotle is, I don't know, 2x more expensive than
Yep.
McDonald's for the same kind of a meal. And Chipotle did great, blew out the numbers, record, great profits, opened 136 stores. So it's just one example of the bifurcated consumer. I'm going to guess Chipotle leans one way and McDonald's leans the other way. We're seeing retailers like Ralph Lauren, clearly higher end, great earnings. Where we're, it's just the death of the consumer has been greatly exaggerated time and time again. And maybe what's happening is we're having one half the economy just lead the way while the other half is struggling. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
What a great example of the Chipotle versus McDonald's, in that yeah, it is totally a different, yeah, that's a total different consumer. Chipotle's Lululemon,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, it's a different kind of a vibe, and a McDonald's is kind of a, yeah, the Walmart type. Yeah, right. It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Wow, very interesting. Bifurcated markets, bifurcated consumers. Very interesting. So let's continue. Let's talk about the S&P. I had to scratch my head. You said S&P and 5,000. I was going S&P
What is he
500,
talking about? Yeah.
5,000. Break it down.
Yeah, so Wednesday, I think the S&P 500 hit 4,999.78 or something like that. So that's a record, right?
Yep.
We're knocking on the door of S&P 5,000. And it's just, and I'm sitting here as somebody who's called for a recession.
Yeah.
I'm calling for a recession that starts in Q1, right? That's the
Yep.
quarter we're in. And it's pretty wild to look at. It is obviously being led pretty significantly by a handful of stocks, but still S&P 5. And the reason this is important is something called the wealth effect. There's a lot of wealth concentrated again in one side of the bifurcated consumer who's feeling frankly flush, frankly well-to-do, because their stock portfolio, their 401ks, their RSUs are doing really well. And that's probably why they're spending. So it's all connected, I think.
Very interesting. And again, something you've talked about. And, we talked about a lot last year in the early part of the year, not as much toward the end, but the bifurcated market, bifurcated consumer, meaning that have and have not. Some people are doing really well, other people are struggling. And there's really that loss in the middle ground, thus the middle class. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think it's being stretched for sure.
Interesting.
Some are going up, some are going down, unfortunately.
Interesting. So Vegas, let's continue the show notes. The Vegas number. Speaking of Vegas, I think there's a football game this Sunday in Vegas, right?
Yeah, I actually went to go buy tickets. Do you have any idea what the last row and the upper deck cost? Do you have any idea?
I don't know, but I have a buddy of mine. He bought a ticket. It's upper level. It's not horrible, and I think they paid 6,500 for one seat.
Yeah,
What is
that's
the
the
upper?
tra-
What's the
up
last seat
the last row now because we're getting closer is $6,500.
for the nosebleed? Bring tissue.
The tippity top last row. I actually checked on Ticketmaster. I'll be watching from home. Thank you very much.
So let's go into the Vegas numbers. What's happening in Vegas this week?
Yeah, so if people watch my channel for a long time, they realize that even before I moved here, I watched Vegas because I think it moves first, up or down. It's a service-based economy, although it's changing. And it always felt to me for the last 20 years, if you could see what happens in Vegas, you can kind of predict the future. And there's a gentleman named Brian Lebo who was on my channel yesterday who I watch. He does weekly numbers. And I'm gonna go from memory and talk about January and then talk about today. And today again is Friday, February 9th. So in January, sales volume went up 11%. Median home price went down 7 grand. Inventory went down 10%. So if you're a doomer, you could talk about the Vegas market falling roughly 2%. If you step back, you can realize that Vegas is up 5% year on year. It's down 2% month on month. The big thing in all this is inventory going down 10%. Now you fast forward to February 9th. Brian does these things called absorption rates, which basically takes active inventory and layers endings. And basically what comes out of that is, how much is really available that hasn't closed, right? It's in contract. So last year, for example, the lowest price point, 250 grand to 500 grand, which is, and Vegas median is 440 so it's it's half the market. 24% or 1 in 4 listings were pending. That's actually pretty low. Fast forward to today, like right now, February 9th, 48% are pending. That's really high. Really high. More importantly, if you compare you compare January to February, absorption, this is what he calls it, is up something like 9% in a falling inventory market. So what I told Brian off air is I expect February numbers to go up significantly. And again, what people don't realize is the median price could be moved by the mix. So what happened in January is you sold a lot of cheap homes.
Yep.
But now, like we just talked about, the wealth effect, all these people feeling wealthy. Brian's telling me about all these people spending over $1 million paying cash. So what's going to happen is I think we're going to see a very distorted February number. It's just going to rip higher. And people are going to go like, oh my God, how did that happen? And I'm going to be like, it's math, people. It's just math. So Watch out for Vegas. It's going to get wild.
And that also speaks to, I think, also the bifurcated, right? Like when you say all the $1 million cash buyers and like people leaving California and, doing bigger, better in Nevada. I mean, that's part of it too, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're feeling good. They got their end of year statements. There's the S&P 5,000. They're like, hey, I'm going to take some chips off the table, buy a house. So it's all connected.
It's all connected. It's all relevant. I love it. We're gonna finish with 2 things. I'm gonna throw you a curveball. Hey, we're gonna talk about the Super Bowl at the end because I want to get a Super Bowl prediction. But before we do, next week's CPI, how important is it? When is it? What do you see happening next week?
So it's Tuesday the 13th. It's the most important number of the week and probably is the most important number of the month. I expect it to be validation that the Fed is winning. Inflation is coming in. However, like all things, it could go the wrong way. If CPI comes in and goes up month on month, we got a problem. We got a problem. If it's also possible that it crashes more than expected. If that happens, then a May rate cut is on the table. If it comes in as expected, a June rate cut is on the table. So it's important. And it'll be the most important number of the month is my prediction.
So Tuesday the 13th, that's a big number. You said that if CPI is higher than expected, not good, no bueno.
Not good.
What
No
what could
bueno.
happen?
Well, if inflation goes up, and it could, the chances of a May or June rate cut go to nearly zero. A May rate cut goes to zero.
Got it.
June gets cut in half, but May goes to zero if inflation goes up.
Got it. But if the number's better than expected, if it's low, and you're saying maybe May we see a rate cut.
May is certainly a possibility.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thoughts on soft landing?
I'm going to stick with my recession call, meaning Q1, Q2, just because I don't like flip-flopping.
Sure.
Just because I like to own it. But I think the chances of a soft landing, meaning below trend growth, not negative, gosh, got to be 40%. Got to be 4 and 10.
Interesting.
And a year ago, I probably would have said 5 to 10%. So it's quadrupled.
Interesting. Okay. Last thing, the Super Bowl, 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think? Who's going to win? What do you throw a score out there?
Yeah. So, it's, I grew up watching Montana and Rice and Young. So you got to go 49ers.
Yep.
I think Brock Purdy has had, not a great playoff run, although he's obviously led to that last minute touchdown and brought him back against Detroit. I think Brock Purdy is going to have an amazing game, and he's going to outduel Patrick Mahomes, which sounds crazy because I think Patrick Mahomes is a magician with the football.
Yep.
I have more faith in the 49er defense than I do the Chiefs defense. And I think Purdy will win the MVP. I think it's going to be not particularly close. I'll go, what do I want to go? I'll go like 31-17.
Such a
Niners.
good number. We didn't talk about this off a pre-roll. My numbers all week has been 31-21, 49ers. Yeah. Same thing. Love Brock Purdy. I think the difference too is the Kansas City Chiefs from a few years back, they don't have Tyreek Hill. So yes. I believe he went to Miami. So they don't have him. And
that would be a problem. He's a problem. But he's not on the Chiefs
over the
anymore.
Fourth quarter in that last game. Like he just completely annihilated all the DBs in the in the last 7 minutes of the game. So
yeah, he's a track star. I mean, yeah, he could, but guess what? He's not there anymore.
He's not there anymore. Well, hey, enjoy the Super Bowl. Last thing, virtual tickets. You're going to be closing the cart soon. Tell them about it.
Yeah, so we're going to shut it down next week. I haven't decided Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I just need less stuff to worry about. I don't have a team. I don't have virtual assistants. It's just me managing all this chaos. So I'm going to shut down the virtual tickets next week. Just, it is what it is. And so I can actually focus on the event. Like I have a call right after we end here to talk about, it's all encompassing. Virtual tickets will stop, just won't be sold sometime early next week. So I can just focus on the event, which starts the following Saturday. So it is what it is. Buy your tickets. There's some seats left and get them before they're gone.
I love it. Have a great weekend, Michael. Thank you. Go 49ers.
There you go.